All right, so what we have here is a classic dihybrid cross about corn. So the problem is telling us that corn kernels have two colors and that purple is dominant to yellow. So first we have to designate symbols for each of those alleles for that gene. So capital A is dominant and is purple. Lowercase a is yellow for kernel color. And then it goes on to tell me that smooth kernels are dominant to shrunken kernels. So I'm going to pick another letter and say smooth is big B and little b is shrunken. All right. Now the problem tells me that I am imagining that a farmer crosses two corn plants, which are both heterozygous for color and texture. So what that's telling me is that both parents, in this case, are heterozygous for both traits. So the first thing I need to write out is big A, big B, little b. That's one parent, and that's showing that that parent is heterozygous for both color and texture, okay? But that is just one parent. And I'm going to cross that parent with, it turns out, a parent that is also heterozygous for both traits. So big A, big B, little b. Before I set up my Punnett square, it's important for me to figure out what gametes this parent can produce, each of these parents can produce. So I'm going to focus on the one on the left here and figure out all the possible gametes or sex cells that they produce through meiosis. And the first thing I need to consider is this cell that I have right here is diploid, but it's going through meiosis, so it's going to become haploid, which means that this parent here can pass on a big A combined with a big B. They can also pass on a big A with a little b. They can pass on a little a with a big B and a little a with a little b. The reason I only have one A and one B in each of these gametes is because these are haploid sex cells or gametes, okay? So they have to have only one A and one B. If you have more than one A and one B in your gametes, you've done something wrong. The other thing to notice before I set up my Punnett square is since this parent has the same genotype as the first parent, they're going to pass on the same gametes because they're both heterozygous for both traits. So the fact that each parent has 4 different potential gametes means that my Punnett square has to have 4 boxes to a side. Okay, so I'm going to set up my Punnett square here. And recall, let's do the top parent first. I have to put each of these gametes along each side of my Punnett square. So I'm going to have a big A, big B, a big A, little b, a little a, big B, and a little b on this side of my Punnett square. And then I need to do the exact same thing on this side here. So a big A, big B, big A, little b, little a, big B, and then on down to little a, little b. And I need to just set up the rest of my Punnett square by making my lines across here. And now I do this Punnett square, even though it's so much bigger than the monohybrid crosses, I do it in the exact same way that I've done all my others. I just join these ones right here with these ones right here. So if these 2 gametes that I've just circled are fertilized, what I'm going to end up with, my genotype for this individual is going to be a big A, big B, big B. And then I can go on down this column here. So if this one fertilizes with this one, I'm going to end up with a big A, big B, little b. Now I'm just going to fill in and stop talking. I filled out my entire Punnett square, and this tells me all the possible offspring that those two heterozygous parents for those two traits could possibly produce. And this also tells me the probability of having certain types of offspring.
This question asks for the phenotypic ratio of all the offspring, so now we need to count that out.
You always end up with 9, 3, 3, 1. There are 9 of 16 possibilities. 9 of them are dominant for both traits. So you'll see here
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
So those are our 9. See how even though their genotypes vary, phenotypically they are dominant for both traits. Now we can count the 3. Let's look at those that are dominant for color, but not necessarily for texture. So those are all the ones with big A's but little B's. So right here, 1, 2, and 3. And now the other 3 is for traits that are recessive for color but dominant for texture. And those are all the ones with big B's but little A's. So these 3 right here. And hopefully what you see is that leaves only 1 out of 16 homozygous recessive for both traits. Okay, right here. 1 out of 16 offspring express both recessive